Today we're talking about running as an independent, and it's going to be a short class because I'm telling you, don't bother. Unless you're famous, don't bother. It is very, very difficult to run as an independent, but there are some ways that you can squeak through, and there are some times you won't have a choice. So let's talk about it at least a little bit, okay? So, first of all, in terms of odds, unless you have a name like Elon Musk or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or something like that, like unless you're that commonly known, then you are not going to win as an independent. Highly unlikely. And that is because, you know, this is going to sound really awful, but I'm going to say that people vote 80 to 90% for their party and not the candidate. So there's about 10%, maybe 20 that really care about the candidate more than the party, or are voting for an ideal that a person might represent. But the majority, 80% of the population, vote purely because of who the party is. And whether the candidate is good or not really is irrelevant a lot of the time. The candidate often doesn't have a lot to do with the success of a campaign, believe it or not. And that's hard to say, but at the same time, that also takes a bit of pressure off you as a potential candidate. The pressure's on people like me and campaign managers, comms people, right? That's where the pressure is. So whether you could be anybody, I could be, running my dog, it doesn't matter because people are voting mostly for the party. So as long as we can keep you out of trouble and off the radar. See, here's the thing. Most people think that the party wants all their politicians to be superstars and be out there and everybody. No. That actually scares the shit out of them because they can't control that. What they want are people that will stay under the radar, only say what they're told, and behave. And every time you're out in front of the public, every time cameras are on you, you could screw up any minute. And any time you make a misstep, especially if it ends up in the paper, that costs $1 million a day. That's how much it costs the party every time you screw up. $1 million a day to clean up your mess. And it distracts from their platform. It distracts from what they're trying to do because now the conversation's about you and not the platform. So, So the party doesn't want people that are too independent thinking. And before you roll your eyes and say, because they just want me to toe the party line. Yeah, because democracy demands that and it gets its own class. So if you have any sniveling kind of internal smugness or some judgment because you think that towing the party line is an evil thing, I'm going to set you straight in the next few classes. So again, suspend what you think should be, suspend what you think you know, because all you know is the spin the papers are telling you. And half the time, the papers are full of shit. So I'm going to tell you the reality of why things are the way they are. And towing the party line is for your protection. It's for the public's protection more than anything. It's for the public's protection. But we'll get into that. So running as an independent, one of the most important things. So first of all, you know that as a candidate, you don't matter anyway. So if most people are voting for a party and you don't matter, then there's no one to vote for if you're running for an independent based on how voters think, right? And voters want to get things done. So they know that in a multi-party system, especially the last 4 years with the NDP and the Liberal coalition, right? They understand that numbers matter, gravitas matters, and an independent doesn't have friends in office that they can put policy through. They're never going to get anything done. So instead, what voters are doing is they're looking for the party that's going to have a seat at the table that will best represent them. And an independent can't do that. Not unless you have massive name recognition. So that's, a guy like Trump, as much as you might want to hate him, a guy like Trump could run as an independent. He may have to. He may have to if he gets to run at all, right? But he could do it because he has the notoriety. He's got a cult following, you know what I mean? And so he could do it. So unless you get Trump level famous, running as an independent probably won't work for you. Now, for sure, federal, provincial, for sure. But but you may be able to squeak by in other levels, but most other levels, there's nothing, everybody's an independent. So for example, municipal politics, party politics don't apply in municipally, right? So everybody's an independent, in which case there's nothing new there. I'm talking about running independently outside of party lines on a federal or provincial campaign. Something like that, very, very difficult to do unless your riding is very small, you have a tiny amount of eligible voters, that you have a localized notoriety enough to win it. But that is few and far between. Now, sometimes something might happen where you are ousted from the party. So maybe you made a mistake that they consider unsalvageable, or maybe you went outside the party lines too much and they need to make an example out of you, or maybe you've been under a scandal or some kind of investigation where it's best for the party if you separate yourself, resign, and sit in your seat as an independent. That's different. And sometimes if your, again, riding is small and you have notoriety within that riding, and let's say they forced you to quit or you were kicked out of caucus, but the public's very upset about that. Maybe most people in the public in your riding took your side and disagree. Well, now you can win as an independent. But you see how I'm saying they're very specialized, unique situations. So if you have the intention of saying, well, I'm going to be different, I'm going to be the person that does win as an independent in a big riding, bitch. If that's where you're at right now, fantastic. But then you need to work on your fame. Because you can't just have a little bit of name recognition and an active social media. Like at this point, you need to be famous. Famous, rock star famous, in order for that to happen. Trump famous. And it can be done, but you better hire yourself a publicist today. Now you've got to work on building that notoriety, and you're going to need a publicist for that. So it can be done, but only in very unique situations, and it should be reserved for the times that you really, really need it. Now, there's benefits from running as an independent in that you don't have to toe a party line, right? So if you're not someone who's interested in winning, maybe you're like, what's his face? The guy from the PPC, Bernier. He knows he's never going to win. He has zero interest in winning. His goal is to collect his paycheck every, week, because he gets paid to do what he does. He wants to collect a paycheck. He wants notoriety. He loves having a big fan club and his ego fed. He loves being a disruptor, right? He loves that populist kind of anti-message, anti-the-man persona he's built for himself. He's someone who's stuck in his story. Bernier is stuck in the story, right? So he knows he's never going to win. He doesn't want to. He just wants to split the vote. As long as he can split the vote, he feels like he could die in peace, and he's doing that very well. So that's the Bernier. So maybe you don't want to win. Maybe you just want to grow a party big enough to pay your bills and give you the ego boost that you need and give you a platform to be disruptive because that's what you like. Listen, if that's as far as your ambition goes, then you can be independent. Then you can start a new party and you can do all that stuff, assuming you find the money and the backing to do it, which is difficult. But if you want to actually win, if you want to contribute positively to democracy, not being disruptive, but actually being solution-oriented and maybe being collaborative, trying to introduce a bit of bipartisan relations, into politics, making it less toxic, more well-being politics. We'll talk about that in a little bit and what that trend is all about. But, unless you're going to do that, you're better off in a party system and injecting whatever benevolence you can into someone who's actually likely to win, so you can actually get a fulsome seat at the table and actually get stuff done. So running as an independent is not usually advisable, but if it's something that you really want to do, get really, 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 really famous, and then you'll have your shot. And you've got to get that hero kind of cult-like following of your own. So you have to be a very charismatic person to be able to incite that kind of cultish following. So if you've got it in you, then you've got a chance. But again, few and far between. You're much better off trying to find the party that you best align with, reframing all the silly audience type beliefs and perspectives you have about party politics, coming to terms with the realities of it by understanding why certain things in politics exist that to the public look horrible but internally make sense, actually serves democracy. People are just too dumb to see it, but you won't be. You will understand it. And as a result, you'll do very well. But as an independent, I don't advise it. So 10 minutes, 48 seconds. I told you it was going to be short. There's nothing to talk about. Just don't do it. Find the party you align with.